I first watched Soldier Blue upon its release in 1970, a raw and angry 20-year-old shaken by its brutality. Recently, in my 76th year, I returned to it. If anything, the film struck me with an even heavier gravity than it did over half a century ago. As the final, devastating scenes unfolded, they brought the same familiar tears to my eyes, but this time they were accompanied by a profound, modern sorrow. It is an agonizing realization that in all the decades that have passed, the human race has failed to learn a single thing. We remain trapped in the same horrific cycles, continuing to senselessly destroy innocent families and children across the globe. Released in 1970, Soldier Blue remains one of the most raw, visceral anti-war films ever committed to celluloid. Directed by Ralph Nelson, it shattered the idealized Hollywood myth of the American West, replacing it with an unflinching examination of military cruelty, hyper-nationalism, and the human cost of systematic violence. The film is explicitly a dramatization of the Sand Creek Massacre of 1864, where U.S. cavalry slaughtered a peaceful village of Cheyenne and Arapaho. However, its release was deliberately timed to confront a contemporary nightmare, the My Lai Massacre of 1968, which had shocked the global public just months before production began. Mirroring My Lai, the Western allegory. By 1970, the public was reeling from investigative reports detailing how American soldiers had murdered hundreds of unarmed South Vietnamese civilians in the hamlet of My Lai. Nelson used the historical atrocities of the Indian Wars as a mirror, proving to audiences that the capacity for wartime atrocity was not a modern aberration, but a cyclical horror fueled by the same toxic mindsets. The parallels between the film's climactic slaughter and My Lai are unmistakable. Dehumanization of the other. In both the historical 1864 and 20th century Vietnamese events, leadership framed the target populace not as humans, but as obstacles. Soldier Blue captures this chilling rhetoric, showing soldiers operating under a blind, unthinking zeal. Blind obedience. The film aggressively dissects the psychological trap of just following orders. It illustrates how regular young men can be conditioned by a military apparatus to completely disconnect from their basic morality. The unflinching climax. The final 15 minutes of the film are notoriously difficult to watch. Nelson refused to look away from the slaughter of women, children, and the elderly. By stripping away the typical cinematic glamour of movie violence, the film forces the viewer into a state of deep revulsion, the ultimate objective of true anti-war art. A country that chooses to misremember its history is doomed to repeat its worst chapters. The underlying ethos of Soldier Blue, the core anti-war message. Unlike mainstream war movies that celebrate tactical victories or focus purely on battlefield heroism, Soldier Blue focuses on the ideological rot that allows massacres to happen. The film contrasts Honus, a deeply naive, patriotic private who believes implicitly in the righteousness of his uniform, with Cresta, a woman who has lived among the Cheyenne and sees through the imperialist propaganda. Through their journey, the audience is forced to strip away their own romanticized ideas of national destiny. It argues that true patriotism requires confronting a nation's crimes rather than sanitizing them. By exposing the horrors of 1864, Soldier Blue sent a blistering, immediate distress signal regarding the ongoing war in Southeast Asia, cementing its place as an uncomfortable, essential masterpiece of anti-war cinema. The modern resonance, a cyclical failure. Tragically, the warning broadcast by Soldier Blue in 1970 feels more like a permanent diagnostic of the human condition than a relic of the past. 56 years later, as today's global landscape is fractured by escalating conflicts across the Middle East, the world continues to demonstrate that it has failed to learn the ultimate lesson of anti-war cinema. In modern warfare, characterized by long-range missiles, drone strikes, and urban siege, the the dynamic remains devastatingly identical to Sand Creek and My Lai. Frontline reports from international bodies like UNICEF consistently reveal that it is still civilians, predominantly women and children, who pay the highest price for adult geopolitical ambitions. By removing the armor of centuries past, Nelson's film continues to demand an answer to an agonizingly current question. How does a supposedly advanced civilization continue to tolerate the systematic, mechanical slaughter of its own most vulnerable?